what must not be said. Please join me in welcoming Paranjoy Guha Thakurta, Kanan Sundaram, Urvashi Butalia, and CP Surendran in conversation with Salil Tripathi. This session is presented by Radio Mirchi. As usual, we'll do a 50-minute conversation and we'll leave around 10 minutes at the end for questions and answers from you. And there will be signings at the end of the session in the far left corner here at the Rajnigandha front lawns. The authors will appear there if you would care to have your books signed. Thank you. Let's give them another round of applause.
Hello? Yeah. So while the other two are being wired up, I thought I'll start with the introduction so that we get as much time as possible in this session. This is a very interesting session, an extremely important session for this at this time, certainly in the subcontinent, but more so in India, given what's going on. To my extreme left, I have, and this is not an ideological statement, but to my extreme left, I have Urvashi Butalia, publisher of Zuban books, and who has done phenomenal and path-breaking work in getting unheard voices in the public domain. To my immediate left is CP Surendran, who is a poet and the editor of DNA, the newspaper, who faces pressures of his own kind from people who want certain things to be said and not said, and he feels very strongly about what can and cannot be said. To my right is Paranjoy Guha Thakurta, who the plight he went through last year is of great significance for us to know, because it talks about a new form of censorship. Paranjoy, of course, is a journalist of long standing and a documentary maker, but he made a film on the business group that shall not be named. Hang on, we'll name it, right? The Reliance Group, okay. And he wrote a book about them, and they weren't very happy about it, and he'll talk about that. And to my extreme right, we are very fortunate to have here Kannan here, and Kannan has published the books of Perumal Murugan. For better or for worse, unfortunately, we have not spoken much about him this time so far, and we are hoping to make up for it. And of course, in an ideal world, he would have been here with us today. So and I'm Salil Tripathi. So without further ado, thank you. Without further ado, I think it's most important and opportune moment to talk about what happened in Tamil Nadu 2 weeks ago. Why is it that Perumal Murugan, the author, decided to come out and say that the author Perumal Murugan is dead? Kannan, can you tell us what happened and what led to this? And after you've given us a brief background, Kannan will read a little part in Tamil and I will read the English part of that from the novel.
I'd like to thank JLF for inviting me here and expressing the solidarity on this issue. In the first week of December, Perumal Murugan, all of whose fiction and most of his books I have been publishing for last 15 years. He called me and said he has been receiving abusive calls and people are threatening him to either withdraw the novel or edit sections of the novel that they are finding very offensive. So this novel was published, not now, but the novel was published in 2010 and it has gone through 4 editions. And we have had no objection so far. There is a theory that this might have been provoked by the English edition which came out in 2013. Apparently there is a Hindutva group sitting in Delhi who are scanning all the Indian language works that appear in translation and then decide what should be objected to, what should be banned and what should be withdrawn, but I can't be sure about this. Perumal Murugan, he was born in 1966. And he's written about 7 to 8 novels so far and several books. He's a professor in a local college. He's a Tamil professor. And he is somebody who keeps away from the limelight. And unfortunately, in unfortunate circumstances, he has been the focus of all the attention for last so many days. So following those threatening calls, then a WhatsApp message was circulated. It said in a very fairly offensive language, it said that, He asked people to assemble around the temple on a particular day at 9:30 in the morning, and people who have Hindu feelings, and that they are going to condemn a street louse who has been insulting local women and Hinduism. That was the second part. The third part was under the leadership of the RSS president of Tiruchengodu chapter. They took out a procession to the local police station where they wanted Perumal Murugan arrested, the novel banned, and they wanted the publisher arrested. They were so ignorant that they didn't know I was a publisher. So they named one of my editors who was thanked in that novel as a publisher and then gave the complaint. That was the third part of the incident. And the fourth part was that Perumal Murugan, they called for a band in Tiruchengodu, and this really shocked Perumal Murugan because he didn't want the people to suffer for a book office. So he voluntarily called a press meet where he said that if somebody has been offended in their own reading by certain portions of the novel, he is prepared to make the changes, and he is apologetic for having hurt anyone's sentiments, and they should withdraw the band call. And the police called for a peace meet before the band, but nobody turned up. And that day night, the police told him that it's not safe for you to be in town anymore, and that he should leave Namakkal where he stays. And he left with his family the same day by midnight. And next day, a band was successfully enforced at Tiruchengodu, and Perumal Murugan had to flee to Chennai. While he was there, he got a call from the local officer asking him to come the call came to him, and they also called me, but I refused to go. And I also advised him against going because I thought this will be local mob where we'll get caught. But he preferred to go and settle the matter. So he went with the lawyer to the meeting where the RTO literally forced him to sign an apologetic statement after 4 hours of negotiations. And that really broke the man. That day night, he issued that statement where he said, the author, Perumal Murugan, is dead. It's only the professor and editor, the very ordinary petty P. Murugan, who remains now. Yeah, that's the.
Yeah, CP, you have a question? Oh, no. Okay.
No, yeah, I did have a question.
But we can come to let's read it first. Can you just read out the 2 paragraphs and I'll read the English version of that?
Yeah, I will. அவளை கெஞ்சி பேசும் வார்த்தைகளில் பொய்மை புகுந்து கொண்டது. அவளை அணைக்கும் போது மனப்பூர்வம் இல்லை. அவளோடு உறவாடும் போது மென்மையும் அவளை இணைத்துக்கொள்ளும் தாராளமும் இல்லை. குத்தி கிழிக்கும் வன்மம் தலைக்கு தூக்கி ஆக்ரோஷம் கொண்டான். தொட்டுப்பட்டி வெக்கை கொண்டதாயிற்று. இரவுகளில் தாழ முடியவில்லை. திடும்பென எழுந்து வீட்டுக்கு ஓடுவான். உள்ளே மண் விளக்கு சுடரை லேசாக எரியும்படி வைத்திருப்பாள். கொப்பு போட்ட பெருங்கதவின் பலகை இணைப்பு சந்தில் கண்ணோடி உள்ளே தூங்கும் அவள் தெரிகிறாளா என்று பார்ப்பான். பார்த்துவிட்டு அவளை எழுப்பாமலேயே தொட்டுப்பட்டிக்கு திரும்பி போய்விடுவதும் உண்டு. மண் விளக்கு சுடர் அணைந்து உள்ளே இருள் மட்டும் தெரியும் நாளில் பதறி போய்விடுவான். உள்ளிருந்து எழும் ஓசை உற்று கேட்பான். வேகமாக கதவை தட்டுவான். ஓரிரு நாளில் தட்டும் ஒலி கேட்டு தாவாரத்திலிருந்து அம்மா எழுந்து வந்து விடுவாள். யாரு என்றதும் வெட்கத்தோடு நான் தாம்மா, நீ போய் படு என்பான். இப்போது அவன் செயல் எல்லாவற்றிலும் பதட்டமும் அசட்டையும் விரவி இருந்தன. அவள் எவ்வளவுதான் நெருங்கி அணைத்து தனக்குள் கொண்டு போக முயன்றாலும் முரண்டு பிடித்து வெளியேறுவதையே விரும்பினான். காலை வரை தெளியாத அளவு சாராயம் குடிக்கப் போகும் நாளில் அவளை துண்டுப்பட்டிக்கே வந்து தங்கச் சொல்வான். அவளை கட்டாயமாக குடிக்கச் சொல்வான். அவன் சாராயம் குடிக்கும் நாளில் உடல் திண்மை நெகிழ்ந்து அவள் மேல் திரவமாய் ஓடும். ரொம்ப நேரம் சந்தோஷமாக பேசுவான். வெறும் கோவணம் மட்டுமே கட்டியிருப்பான். விளையாட்டு போக்கில் இழுத்து அதை உருவி விடுவான். கொஞ்சமும் கூச்சம் இல்லாது உட்கார்ந்திருப்பான். உனக்கு கொஞ்சம் கூட வெக்கமே இல்லை, எல்லாத்தையும் ஊத்துட்டு நிற்கிற என்று பொய்கோபம் காட்டுவாள். உனக்கு முன்னால் எல்லாத்தையும் ஊத்துட்டு நிற்கிறதுல எனக்கு என்ன வெக்கம், நீயும் அப்படி நில்ல என்பான். இப்போது எதுவும் இல்லை.
Thank you very much. And very briefly and quickly, the English version of this. These thoughts drained his trust in her. A falseness entered in his sweet words to her. His embrace was no longer wholehearted. There was no softness when he made love to her. not the usual generosity that let him include her in its sway. He came to be possessed by a fury for revenge, a desire to pound her violently and tear her apart. It was hot in the barnyard those days, even at night. He would wake up suddenly and go home. Ponna kept the earthen wick lamp burning softly through the night. He would peep through the gaps in the wooden planks of the door to see if she was asleep. Sometimes he even went back to the barnyard without waking her up. Whenever he saw that light inside was put out, that there was nothing but darkness, he panicked. On such days, he listened carefully for any sound that came from inside the house. Sometimes his tapping on the door woke his mother. When she asked, "Who is it?" he replied shyly, "It's just me. Go back to sleep." A sense of urgency and carelessness started pervading all his actions. However much she tried to hold him tight and take him inside her, all he wanted was to hold back adamantly and ejaculate as soon as he could. Whenever he decided to drink loads of arak, which he knew would knock him out till the morning, he asked her to come and stay in the barn. He would force her to drink. Earlier, on the nights he drank, his body lost its harshness and spread on her like a fluid. He would chatter happily for a long time. On such nights, he wore only the loincloth. She would playfully pull it open, but he would feel no shame. She would say in mock anger, "You have no shame. Look at you, sitting with nothing on." And he would reply, "Why should I feel any shame in front of you? Why don't you be naked too?" But there was none of that intimacy now. Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
What is provocative about this? I mean, why would, the sex part of it, I thought, totally devoid of any real provocation. The body parts have not been named. It's a perfectly decent passage of writing. I mean, so where is the question of the threat coming in? Why did he cancel all his books? I would think the entire issue is a bit blown up.
We didn't read a portion that was considered provocative, but the storyline that was considered provocative. That is, this novel depicts a life of a childless couple that lived about approximately 100 years ago. And for childless couple, there is a ritual in the local temple that once in a year, on a certain day of the temple festival, the woman can have traditional, free, consensual sex ritual with any man she likes and have a child, and that child would be considered a gift of God. It is this part of the novel, the storyline, that the fundamentalists found very provocative, and they thought it's an insult to Hinduism and to local women. And as far as your question as why the author had to make this decision, see, I have dealt with this issue in two levels, one as a publisher and another as the author's friend. As a publisher, my advice to him was very consistent. Don't compromise, don't negotiate, and never yield to any of these threats. I will be with you, and there is a huge intellectual community across the world who will be with you, and we can face this together. That has always been my commitment to him all through this problem. But as a friend and as a publisher, I have also tried to understand why he is making certain decisions. My thing is that I do not expect writers to be warriors. They don't have to, but they risk their life and fight. That's not necessarily one of the qualifications of being a writer. They are great artists. They bring out great things in life. And if we respect their art, it is our job, the job of intellectuals, the media, and more than any of us, it's the job of the secular state to protect them. And when the state fails to do that, I think we should question the state and not the writer.
That's very, very well put, because indeed this is a case of state failure. But one of the interesting things that Kannan just said, writers are not warriors. Urvashi, you had interesting experiences with writers. You have represented them. You are willing to go out and bat for them. And sometimes things change. Do you want to talk about that, but also bring the conversation into it? Yeah.
Yes, okay. See, I think in many ways, this whole business is very complicated. There is no doubt that as publishers who are politically committed, and Kannan is one such publisher, we are one such publisher, we are committed to both the freedom of expression and the need for respect and dignity of the subjects we write about and what our writers write. So as far as I'm concerned, for example, I publish books about women, and I see and know that women are insulted every minute of every day in this country in multiple ways. We don't get up and shout and scream and say, you don't have the right to say this about us and you must take it out of our books. Because apart from believing in the freedom of expression, I also believe that will pretty much stop 90% of the books in this country being published, because they are insulting to women. They treat women really, really badly. But as a publisher, I've also had to both bat for my writers, like Kannan has done, and understand where they're coming from. We have not been in the same kind of situation, but we've been close to it. There was a time, for example, that we were going to be publishing a book called, by a Mauritian writer, it was called The Rape of Sita. Now, publishers routinely change titles of books because they feel that one title is more marketable than the other. And we had a discussion with the author on the possibility of changing that title for various reasons, and it wasn't a reason of fear. But then her book got banned in Mauritius. And the discussion took on another color altogether, because it got banned because the Hindu lobby in Mauritius, which is powerful, small, but rich, said you can't publish this because this is nonsense, Sita was never raped. Now, it's all, all of us talk about whether Sita was sexually assaulted by Ravan or not or whatever, but this could not be said. So the title of this session was that which cannot be said, could not be said. Much later, we had a different experience where a short story to be included in a volume of short stories that, or in a volume of short writings about erotica, was published in Mint, in the newspaper Mint, and 2 months after its publication, so it parallels this story because it's 2 years or more after the publication, somebody made a report in a small thana in Bombay saying this is insulting to our religion, and named us as publishers, named one of my editors, named the author, and named a whole host of other people, and tried to file a criminal case against us. Now, what did I think as publisher? I thought, okay, I have to fight this because I have to fight for my right to say this. But the author herself did not want to fight this, was frightened and wanted to make a distance from it. So then what's my responsibility as a publisher? I don't know, really. It's a question. Second thing was, the moment I saw that report that the police brought to me, my first thought was not, I have to say, for the freedom of expression, but it was that I run a woman-only office. 95% of my employees are women. Can I expose my employees to this kind of risk? Realistically, you have to think of that. And when Kannan said, the police advised Perumal to go away, I think that's where we need to turn our attention. Why did the police advise him to go away rather than saying, we will protect you, it's our duty, we'll stand by you. So the issues of what one might call freedom of expression, for me as a publisher, are very much located in the context of the here and now, in the context of what the writer wants at an abstract level, what it means for her at a practical level. For Perumal, at a practical level, he thinks, I'm a professor, I'm a writer, I am this, that, and the other. Writing is only one of my personalities, so if I have to sacrifice that for the other things, it's okay. Now, as publishers, no matter how much we want to defend the freedom of expression, we have to support that. So very often, the decision is not a clear-cut decision located in the abstract belief in the freedom of expression, which all of us subscribe to. But it is a decision which might be considered a compromise because it's located in the realities of the here and now. That's, I think, where I stand as a publisher.
Paranjoy, I mean, you in a way took the matter in your own hands, right? Because you had a major role in the publication of your book. Can you just walk us through what went through? I mean, did you think of going to a traditional publisher with this book? And then, of course, you faced the legal threat when you wrote the book, and how you dealt with it. Were you ever worried? Did you ever feel there was a need to compromise?
Okay, thank you, Salil. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Jaipur Literary Festival, for giving me this opportunity to speak to all of you. I am honored, I'm privileged. 4.5 years ago, my co-authors, Shubir Ghosh and Jyotirmoy Chaudhary, who's here in the audience, and yours truly, we started putting together this book entitled Gas Wars, Crony Capitalism and the Ambanis. I signed a contract, I signed an agreement with HarperCollins, and in February of 2014, HarperCollins suggested that I cut the book to half its present size, and after it was vetted by their lawyers, they would bring it out in the month of May, by which time the outcome of the 16th general elections in India would be known. So that was not acceptable to me. So I decided to become my own publisher, and I realized today, having become a publisher, that's easier today for an author to become a publisher. I'm thankful also to another person who's right here, Manish Purohit, authors up front, who showed me the way and who shows other people the way how authors can use technology to become their own publisher. Having said this, this book seeks to look at how a family headed by the richest man in India has benefited greatly from the manner in which the government has allotted, I should say misallotted, the way the government has priced, I should say mispriced, a natural resource, in this case gas, which is found on the southeastern shores of this country, in the Bay of Bengal, of the coast of Andhra Pradesh. And this is a resource that belongs to the people of this country. But at the end of the day, a privileged few have received the benefits from this natural resource, and large numbers of people have not gained. I mean, this is a story that you see getting repeated over and over again in the case of coal, in the case of telecommunication spectrum, in the case of iron ore, in the case of land, in the case of water. What happened was, when we wrote the book and we brought out the book on the 15th of April 2014, the same day in which, very, very coincidentally, Gopal Krishna Gandhi, the former governor of West Bengal, he, at a public meeting at Vigyan Bhavan, he described the house of the Ambanis, the Reliance Group, as a parallel state. He said, earlier we used to talk about a parallel economy, but now we have a parallel state. And he named the Ambanis in a public forum. And this was something that surprised me. But he said that, you know, never before in the history of South Asia has a single company, a single corporate group exercised so much control over a country's natural resources, its financial resources, and so on and so forth. So what this book essentially sought to do was look at why this has happened. What's been argued is that the reason why the late Dhirubhai Ambani's business empire got partitioned was not really because the two wives, Nita and Tina, were not exactly the best of friends. It was because the brothers fought over who should control natural gas from the Krishna Godavari basin. And when there was a court case, it went up to the Supreme Court. When the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the older brother, by that time the brothers were fighting each other. What this book argues, that it is the government of India, which is supposed to be the representative of the people of this country, which is supposed to be a custodian of the resources that belong to the people of the country, including natural gas. The way in which they structured a production sharing contract was deeply flawed and had benefited a few people. We've talked about how within the government there was resentment, unhappiness, but a particular minister, Mani Shankar Iyer, in a closed door meeting after he ceased to be the Minister of Petroleum and Natural Gas, he said when the price of gas was increased from $2.34 per unit to $4.20 per unit by an empowered group of ministers headed by the then External Affairs Minister Pranab Mukherjee, who now happens to be our President, our Rashtrapati. So when Mr. Mani Shankar Iyer described this hike in the administered price of gas as 2.34 to 4.20, he says everybody in India knows what 420 is all about. It's not I, a former minister in the same government. And then Mr. Jaipal Reddy, I write that how he was kicked upstairs from Minister of Petroleum and Natural Gas to Minister of Science and Technology, how the cabinet was deeply divided. Soon after this book was released, I received a a legal notice from lawyers representing the richest man in the company, Mr. Mukesh Dhirubhai Ambani, Chairman and Managing Director of Reliance Industries Limited, the biggest privately owned corporate entity in this country. And he suggested that, I had defamed them. Then the younger brother's lawyers sent me another legal notice. Then I got a third love letter which said that pay 100 crores in 10 days. And this letter was sent to Amazon, it was sent to Flipkart, it was sent to a young woman who committed a huge crime. What did she do? She emailed an electronic invite telling people that this book was going to be launched. That legal notice was served on her as well. So we had to tell Flipkart, this is just a legal notice, there's no court injunction. Please continue selling our book and people will buy it. And what also happened, I said, tell me, how have I defamed Mr. Ambani? He says, the legal notice says you've described him as an oligarch. I said, there is something called Article 19(1)(a) of the Constitution of India, which says freedom of expression. There's a fundamental right of every citizen. I mean, have I violated Article 19(2)? Is that a reasonable restriction that you're imposing on me? Then said, you've suggested that because of pressure of the Ambanis, Mr. Manishankar Ayer's portfolio was changed, Mr. Jaipal Reddy was kicked upstairs. That's defamatory. I said, look, if anybody should be feeling defamed, it should be the former Prime Minister, Dr. Manmohan Singh. After all, he is the Prime Minister. He decides who holds ministerial portfolios. I said, find a factual error in what I've written. They couldn't find a factual error in what I've written. I said, take me to court. No, despite all these legal notices, Sucheta Dalal of Money Life, she reviewed the book. And after she reviewed the book, she also got a legal notice, pay 100 crores in 10 days. So, despite all these legal notices, the book is available. It's available to all of you. It's available right outside this venue of this conference. And the short point is that here is a classic attempt by some people who are very rich and very powerful and very influential to suppress voices that don't agree with what they're saying. Voices of dissent, voices of criticism. I'm not alone. Tamal Bandyopadhyay in the case of the Sahara Group, Jitendra Bhargav in a book called The Descent of Air India, earlier Hamish MacDonald, who wrote a book called The Polyester Prince, when Caravan published an extract from a chapter by Siddharth Deb about Mr. Arindam Chaudhary of the Indian Institute of Planning and Management. All of them had to face different forms of intimidation, different forms of harassment.
Also, Vasanti's book on Jayalalitha was stopped.
All right,
A
absolutely
permanent
correct.
injunction in any court anywhere in the world, she can't publish it.
So here's what I'm drawing as parallel streams, and I want to bring you in, CP, on this one. That you have a mob demanding that the author do certain things and the state siding with the mob, in your case. You have social norms being imposed and intimidating an author to take certain steps to dissociate herself from a particular piece of writing, and you have to go along with that. And you are writing something where you are writing something that offends a specific, very powerful individual who uses the law again in a way to try to silence you. Obviously, people are getting offended. Obviously, people think that this is what they don't like, and they are using the law to do that. As an editor, what kind of pressures do you face dealing with that? And what should be done with this whole disease which is rampant in India called taking offense?
I think, in my experience as both as a journalist as well as a writer, one of the things which I find, and I might be repetitive here because day before I had the more or less same kind of argument going, is that people talk about freedom of speech, and you can't have freedom of speech unless you are ready to be offended. You have the right to offend. There's a fundamental right, whether it's a cartoon, whether it's a book, whether it's a piece of article in a newspaper or a blog. You need to have the right to offend. I'm not saying, therefore, that you should go across and hack people with your pen and insult them. That's not the point. The point is that right now, the way I look at it, and I can tell you from my personal experience, whether it's publishing houses or elsewhere or in newspapers, issues are discussed in terms of protectionist lobbies. You know, you can't make fun of people whether they have got a certain color, caste, women, gay, animal lovers. I mean, every single big issue of the day has been taken out of the ambit of laughter and criticism. You know, you can't do that. You know, there has to be a certain concentric circles, some areas where people must be ready, culturally open to laugh at themselves. It is because, you know, I don't have to tell you this. You watch the Indian television in the evening, I mean, there's not a single smiling face there. You know, everything is totally serious, conspiratorial, including the weather. You know, you can't have stuff like that. In newspapers, you don't have a good pungent column, except one or two. You really look for it.
CP, the nation wants to know why we can't laugh at ourselves.
You will never speak out of turn.
So I think that is what we need to do. We need to be culturally a bit more liberal, at the same time respecting that, you know, sentiments could be hurt and there are certain kind of boundaries to be drawn. But the right to offend is integral to right to creativity, right to speak, freedom of expression, whatever.
And I think we've been through this path before. It goes back to 1988 when Salman Rushdie wrote the Satanic Verses, and of course it became a big issue. And the slight angle I have there is that it's not so much the right to offend. Many writers don't go out with the with the desire to offend. They want to write, they want to draw something, they want to state something. It's the offense is the feeling that comes in the mind of the reader. And Rushdie in this context has often said that if you don't like a book, shut it, argue with it, challenge it, but don't ban it, don't burn it. Those are the ways to move forward with that. But obviously we have moved far beyond. We can't even click like on Facebook anymore. We can't send a cartoon to somebody else about a chief minister, because if we do, we might go to jail under section 66A. So one thing I want to talk about here is the law itself, because we talked about the state and its absence from this debate. That it's not only 19.2, not only the first amendment of Indian constitution, which actually allows the state to restrict freedoms as against granting them, but we have the 295A and 153A and 66A. All of these laws actually circumscribe and reduce the speech even more. Even the Cinematography Act and the censor board and the restrictions there are circumscribing the freedom more. What it brings me back is what Busy Bee used to say during the emergency, that there are only two topics safe writing about: cricket and mangoes. So how far are we from that?
There still are the safer subjects, cricket and mangoes.
So I'm genuinely curious. I mean, what can one do to change that? Is it for the politicians to do it? Is it for readers and writers to challenge that? What should be the next step there? We all know the problem.
May I make a brief suggestion? You know, the law is an ass. It will always be an ass. Maybe day after tomorrow it might turn into a donkey or a mule. But the problem is that those who are intolerant, they're usually in a minority, but they're very vocal. And they use the media, including the social media and the internet, to amplify their voices, their screams, their raves and their rants. I think the proverbial silent majority, which is tolerant, doesn't speak up enough. And because people don't speak up loudly enough, the intolerant minority often get to harass and intimidate. So I would urge that all those who sincerely believe in freedom of expression, you shouldn't keep quiet. You should speak out.
That which should be said in that case.
Absolutely.
Do you want to come in on that?
You know, I want to come in with some slightly more, how should I say it, realistic responses to that. I don't think that those who object to the freedom of speech are in a minority. I think quite the opposite. I think what gives them power is to know that they have a lot of tacit support. Why is it that most of the objections to what has been written in India in the past, let's say 10 years, have come from the Hindu right wing? Because they are in a majority, they know they have the support of the state. I don't care BJP or Congress, but there was the support of the state. They know they have the support of the institutions of the state. Why is it that men are able to speak so insultingly, the right to offend notwithstanding, about women and get away with it? Because they are not necessarily in a numerical majority, but they have the power and they are able to. It is very, very difficult if you are in a minority or a marginalized or you're powerless to have the right to offend with such impunity as you might have it if you are in power, because everything supports you.
You know,
in our society, let me finish, everything supports the powerful voice. Imagine a Dalit writer taking the right to offend and thinking he or she can do this with impunity. Zero, the law will catch them tomorrow, they will be imprisoned, they will be told get out. Murugan is a Tamil writer, marginalized by language, told you need to save yourself. So I think that that is one thing, but I think the other side of the coin, for those of us who are in the business of being purveyors of knowledge, where giving offense, taking offense, offending, whatever is part of our business, is that realistically we know you can stop the print, but you can't stop the internet. You can stop one medium, but there are many others. So we have to work with that reality and say, okay, print books ruk jati hain, we will get it on the internet. We also have to work with the reality that the offense or the stopping or the coercion does no longer come only from the state, but it comes from arbitrarily self-appointed bodies who see themselves as guardians of our morality. And really, as a publisher, I want to beat them to a pulp, but because I'm a law-abiding citizen, I don't, and I can only fight them with weak laws, which is what we have.
You know, one brief intervention. I don't disagree at all with you.
In just one second, but go on.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you at all. I'm merely saying even among the so-called, you know, those who believe in Hinduism, that so-called right-wing, intolerant minority, I do believe they don't represent the majority of Hindus. But I do agree entirely with you. They have the support of the establishment, the ruling establishment. So at the end of the day, when you talk about Article 19.2, who decides what is a reasonable restriction on the right to free speech? Is it the judge of the Supreme Court, or is it your goon on the street helped by the establishment? Example, here was a young man in Pondicherry who tweets that he thinks that Karti Chidambaram, son of former Finance Minister P. Chidambaram, has more wealth than Robert Vadra. But before he knows it, the cops have arrived at his doorstep early in the morning. So that is a reflection of exactly what you're saying. I don't disagree with what you're saying.
I just wanted to bring you on this internet part, because you wanted to talk about what you have done, which is a very brave thing to do. Why don't you say that? Yeah.
Yeah, I also want to speak about that.
Please.
So 2 points is that one is that, you know, when this matter came up, whenever the English media came to me, they always said the fringe groups. And every time I had to refute them, because I think by saying they are fringe groups, we are sort of saving underplaying the threat of the problem. Because every majority caste in the area, every majority religion in the area has become completely intolerant to certain things from their past and certain things which they consider the inner secrets. Writers, by essential, they are faithful only to their work. They are not faithful to caste, religion or community, and therefore they reveal things that are found very uncomfortable to many people. And they all want to shut this voice down. It's not a fringe group, it's not a minority. That's what I feel. Number two is that I think the way technology can be used to handle such problems is that when Perumal Murugan was forced to sign that document saying that he will edit his work in the next edition, and I was morally bound by the decision, even if not legally. So when in the Hindu Literary Festival, they called me there, I went as a viewer, but then somebody asked a question pointed towards me. While answering, I made an announcement there. I said, if anybody scans this book and uploads this as an e-book, I will not sue you. So that day, night, the book went viral on Facebook. So now whatever the other party does, whatever happens in the future, the unedited volume of the book is available for everyone, free for all times.
It's in Tamil though, yes. But that's wonderful what you've done at that time. But I wanted to, the marginalized voice that you were talking about, I wanted us to focus a little bit on a cartoon that we spoke about yesterday, Manjul and I, because we had an impromptu session on cartoons and free speech. And this is a cartoon that was done by V. Shankar, where Ambedkar is sitting on a snail and Nehru is whipping it. Now, when the cartoon was made, Shankar was famously told by Nehru himself, don't ever spare me. Ambedkar also had no personal objection to that cartoon. 60 years ago it went in unnoticed, but it was in an NCERT textbook. Dalit groups today claim that this is insulting, and finally it led to the revision, and a lot of cartoons were taken out of these textbooks, which was probably a bad thing to happen. But my question is this, that A, is this what we know the consequence today of what is often called competitive intolerance? That because Muslim groups get satanic verses banned, we will get MF Hussain banned, okay, then we will get this cartoon banned, and we will get Christuvinde Aram Tirumurivu, which was the Malayalam version of Six Sacred Wound of Christ, Kazan Saki's novel, that should be banned. And again, it goes back to the topic that we ultimately talk only about cricket and mangoes. So my question is again that are we going to that sort of a situation that even the marginalized groups feel that because this group has done it, that group has done it, the state is not going to do anything about it, we can get away with it.
Yeah, I think that that's definitely one of the dangers. And I think one of the things also that, because one kind of politics leads to another kind of thing, and I think that that's definitely one of the dangers, although we have to recognize where the protests are coming from and understand why, say, something becomes objectionable at a particular time and is not at another, which is not to say that the standards have to be different. I think you're absolutely right about that. But I also think that the situation is, again, I keep going back to this whole thing of being realistic. That I think one of the things we have to confront is whether the remedies being sought or whether the objections being made are couched in given legal and democratic terms, or whether they resort to extra legal measures. If it is like a legal objection, then I think that is the only ground on which we can fight it. If it is an extra legal thing, like we will threaten violence and so on and so forth, then I think we have to have a different reaction. In practical terms, I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it does, absolutely. But it means that the battle is really got to be fought at the level of legislatures.
The battle has got to be fought at multiple levels.
Yeah.
I mean, suppose somebody is threatening violence to you and your staff, how do you fight that battle? You know, are you going to take dandas yourself?
Sorry. Has Perumal Murugan, for example, has he been within courts offending for a long time?
Has he been offending for a long time?
Stuff for a long time?
Within courts?
This is it's not the first time he has been facing these problems. The first novel he wrote was about probably 20 years ago. And since then, consistently, for many of his books, he has faced problems, but not at this level. Maybe local important people, maybe local caste, few people calling him, threatening him. So he has been continuously facing that. But what has happened now is two things. One is that the place where he lives, Namakkal, is known for what I would call education factories, where if you send a student in, you will get out a high scoring student. I mean, intellectually completely gone, but no high scoring. So he has consistently written about this system of education, which really, has a bad thing on the students and intellect. And he has written many of the articles in my own magazine. I publish a magazine. And that has really angered the educationists of that area who have a lot of money. And we suspect that they have been funding these protests. Also last year, we published one of his very important anthologies that Caste and I, where he asked not writers, but ordinary students and professors who were, whom he nurtured. He asked them to write their experience about caste system. And we published a volume of 27 articles that, that are very, very important, that anybody who reads them will really have a rethink about the caste system. And in the present context of Tamil Nadu, where every caste is getting more and more empowered, I am sure these activities have angered a lot of people, and many things might have come together at this point to get after him. Therefore, that's what he says. What he feels is that the issue is not the novel, the issue is me. And if I stop this novel, they'll go for the next book, and the next book. Therefore, the only way I can be safe is to say that, none of my novels will be in print.
I want to make a brief intervention and say, when it comes to writing or expressing yourself against individuals who are very rich, very wealthy, and therefore very influential, they do not like anything which their public relations agency has not approved. So in that sense, what they use is across the world what is called SLAPP, strategic lawsuits against public participation, or strategic litigation against public participation. But more often than not, it's the threat of a lawsuit which is used to intimidate and harassment. I myself am the proud recipient of over half a dozen legal notices, but I've never been behind bars, and they haven't moved court. So that again, I mean, I can speak from my personal experience, the attempt is to intimidate you, to harass you, and that is often used as a weapon.
And that's what you mustn't give in to, I think.
Right.
That has to be fought at all levels.
Right. You wanted to, you did want to come in,
Well,
yeah.
I did, but you know, I don't know where this discussion is just now going, because I don't know if it's actually a legal issue. I think it's a cultural issue. You know, it is. I mean, you may keep changing your laws, make it more, you know, stringent. I don't know if that solves anything. I think the real problem here is the matrix is cultural. You know, it is actually about saying my God is so, I'm so sensitive to my God. My God is superior to your God. My feelings are better than yours. You know, so they need to be preserved. So it is this great sense of blackmail which one practices on one's own sensitivity and, you know, holds it as a big flag. So don't touch this. I think that there is where the problem is. You know, it's not a legal thing, I would believe.
I think by the law, please.
No, I just wanted to ask you, even though you're moderating the session, because you've written on Charlie Hebdo, which is the most recent and big example. I just wanted to ask you to comment on the questions you've been putting to us.
Oh, I think that the law should strengthen and protect the writer and the creative person. I really think that the limit for freedom of expression, that if there is to be a boundary, it should be as wide as possible, as far as possible. So if someone were to shout fire here just now, yes, that person should be stopped, because there could be a stampede and people could die. If I were a religious preacher of any religion and telling people to take out little machetes and go out and kill people in the other village there, that is incitement of hatred and violence. Maybe that speech can be stopped. But other than that, I think everything should be fine. I mean, when some Hindu leader says that go and have 10 children, or a Muslim leader said that we are only 20 crore and you are 120 crore, but we can take you on, let them say it. If it's not said, it goes subterranean and it gets worse. But one final question to all of you, and maybe it's a thought to, and very quick, this is the 50th year of Sound of Music, so I'm going to ask in that tone, how do we solve a problem called Dinanath Batra?
Dinanath Batra.
How do we solve? Is it possible, or is it that what we need are better laws? Because he is exercising his rights. He's given those rights using the system to do this.
Well, my answer to that would be, first of all, I think everybody has a role to play in this. I think we look at that law and re-examine it and see if it needs any change, or if there is a way in the law that we can have a loophole to fight that. I think we ignore him. And I think the media would do well to ignore him instead of lauding him. And I think we put pressure on the state to actually take seriously what he's doing. I think we put pressure on our new Prime Minister, who has written introductions to his books.
To Mr. Batra's books, yes.
To Mr. Batra's books, to pull those out and make a statement on it. There are many levels at which one can try to address this.
Okay, you've been very silent. It's your turn now. Questions? Girish here first, yes. Can we have a mic, please, for Girish?
Paranjoy Dasgupta mentioned that you could go to the court and you can fight and the majority can get together. I'll tell you what happens. This has happened in Bangalore. There are laws according to which you can go to the police and say, my sentiments are hurt. That's all. My religious sentiments are hurt, and he's expected to arrest you. He's expected to take you to the magistrate. He takes you to the magistrate. I've been through this with other people. The magistrate is busy. He can't take that case. So he says, come next Friday. Till then, the policeman is supposed to keep him in a cell. You know? And then, so all this thing about the legal, this being that, they don't apply at the moment as the laws work to the normal citizen. Anyone on any grounds can go to the police and say, my religious sentiments are hurt, and therefore this author should be arrested, and police are obliged to. You know, we are living in a police state, not in a state run by the court. That is the problem. There is no. How many of us can go to the court? How many of us can go to the Supreme Court? Or even to the High Court? We can't. But the system that operates on the local is the police. And the police just want to get out of it as soon as possible. That's it.
You know, I entirely agree with them. I think when the matter goes to the police, they will not think about the issues of freedom of expression or freedom of ideas. They will think it only as a law and order problem. Therefore, I think we should think of approaching the Supreme Court and ask them to provide certain guidelines by which a great artist cannot be harassed by a local police inspector.
Can I make a brief intervention?
Yeah,
Mr.
very
Kannada, I
quickly, because I'd
entirely
like to take
agree
questions.
and endorse everything you said. And all of us collectively have to resist, have to protest. I just want to make one point. You know, this whole thing about majority. Majority view and a majoritarian way of operating, of ideology, of running is different. Because as opposed to what the majority thinks, a majoritarian view is that you do not respect the views of the minority. And that is really the problem that we have today. And that, in my opinion, is the problem.
Yeah, the first row, please. Yeah.
Yeah, coming to this Dinanath Batra's school of thought. Now, what Urvashi said,
Can you hold it closer?
at times publisher roles become a bit difficult when a writer decides to distance himself or herself if there is some controversy. But at the same time, isn't it that you are making things more difficult where publishing house, without really court giving any order, withdraws a book like it happened in case of when Didoni judged the Hindu. There was no court order, but because of Dinanath Batra's plea, they just withdrawn the book from the market. So I just want to say,
Sir, there are more examples. And Jitendra Bhargav's book called Descent of Air India was pulped by Bloomsbury. Why? Because Praful Patel, a former civil aviation minister, gets an injunction from a lower court. Now, once again, you know, when publishers buckle under, what can the author do except what Jitendra Bhargav has done, go online and say, take my book, you know, get an Amazon Kindle version. Yes, please.
I think Urvashi wants to come in. Just one more.
I think that is the mistake. I think that one thing is that many of our laws treat our citizens in the old colonial mindset as subjects rather than citizens who are mature rights-bearing individuals, and therefore try to protect us from things they think are very dangerous for us. I think we need to fight at that level and ensure that the laws in this country, and this is a battle in which we are all involved, and therefore I think it's very wrong to say why are publishers doing this, why are authors doing this, and every time this debate starts, an author gets up and says, oh, you damn publishers, you're doing this, and the publisher thinks, yeah, these authors, you know, they're just holding forth and they're sounding holier than thou. जब अपने ऊपर पड़ता है तो डर के मारे भागते हैं दुम दबा के. So it's not a fruitful way to solve this problem. This is an issue which is only going to get more and more dangerous for all of us as writers, as publishers, as individuals with the freedom in a country to say what we wish to say. And I think we have, the battle is a battle. I'm not given to making statements like this, but we have to fight it together.
Yeah.
We cannot start blaming each other. Paranjoy, don't do this thing about publishers.
No, all I'm
Just
really
because
saying,
you
Urvashi,
publish,
there are publishers and there are publishers.
No, no, there are
And there are writers and there are
Let's
writers.
accept
Now, we are
that.
really running out of time. And please, can we have the next question? Sorry about that. Yeah. The gentleman there and there was a lady here in the red, pink. Yeah. Yours will be the last one. After that, yeah. If you just give her the mic and that's where we'll stop. But please.
Yeah, hello. This is more of a suggestion. My question is, why don't the publishers and writers who believe in freedom of expression pool in their resources and form a legal defense council or something?
It's a very good suggestion. Yeah.
Lawyers that will benefit all the writers, because not every writer is empowered enough to fight their own battles. This will at least make them fearless on one ground, that is the legal battles.
Yeah.
Everything else has to be taken care of, but this will at least
Excellent
be taken care of.
suggestion.
Excellent suggestion, and there are organizations which are thinking along those lines right now.
And you'll have to join in.
And you join in the struggle. It's not just publishers,
With
it's
your
everybody.
resources as well.
We are all in it together. Yes, please.
Hello, everybody. My question is that do you think a particular set of people, you know, they purposely go to the court and, you know, go to the police station and say that they have been offended just because they want to get some attention and limelight from the media? For example, as similarly as the books, we saw the movie PK and there is some set of people who say that they have been offended. People have seen the movie over and over again, but I particularly cannot find anything offending. So do you think that same thing happens in the, you know, in matters of writing? People say that they have been offended, but there is nothing offensive in that. They just want to get attention out of it.
I agree with you. That's what often is the case, but please.
Yeah, I think none of us will disagree with you.
Yeah.
Except that these elements also have the support of some very powerful people. And that's why they are emboldened to act in the way they do.
And in the PK case, I would recommend you look at the judgment of the Delhi High Court last week, which actually makes precisely these points, that, you know, the faith is strong enough to have
but you know, in the issues of freedom of expression, when it finally goes to higher court, probably the decision will be in favor of the writer or artist. But the problem here is that the legal process itself becomes a punishment. That is where, that is the pressure under which publishers and authors sometimes buckle, is that process itself is a punishment.
But I would also add, I think that sometimes people are genuinely offended. It's not that they are saying they're offended only to gain publicity.
Sure.
And they may well be genuinely offended, but that doesn't mean you go and kill the other person. You can be offended, that's your right, but that doesn't mean you go and, destroy whatever there
just
is.
to end, we do have to end. So all I will do is quote from Harun and the Sea of Stories, where the land of Gup and where the land of Chup. And the land of Chup looks very powerful because nobody speaks, and there's an elegance to that silence. But in the end, the loquacious one, the talkative one, the ones who live in the ocean of notions and the stories, they ultimately win. And therefore, the Gup will win and Chup will not. I have to stop here. Thank you so much, but let's keep talking.
Thank you.
Thank you.
After we have to get these things off.
A huge thanks to Paranjoy, Guha, Thakurta, Kanan Sundaram, Urvashi Butalia,